The hearing of the Committee on Finance is hereby resumed. This afternoon, we will hear the proposed budget of the DOLE as well as its attached agencies. I'd like to welcome the entire DOLE family. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Salamat sa inyong pagdunong sa pagdinig. I'd like to acknowledge Secretary Baldos for her presentation. Good afternoon, ma'am. You may proceed.
Good afternoon po, Honorable Chairman Senator Jesus Codera and all the members of the committee. In behalf of the DOLE and its attached agencies, may I present the DOLE 2015 proposed budget based on the National Expenditure Program. Next slide, please. Representing the DOLE resource framework, that would show that we are pursuing the DOLE roadmap on decent work for all and competitiveness of enterprises using the program activities and projects embodied in our National Expenditure Program. And this will contribute to the following four major final outputs of DOLE and its attached agency. One is labor policy services, employment facilitation and capacity building services, labor force welfare services, and employment regulation services. In turn, the achievement of these major final outputs will contribute to the four organizational outcomes under our roadmap on decent work for all and competitiveness of enterprises. One, enhance employability of workers and competitiveness of enterprises. Two, sustain cooperation between labor and employers. Three, strengthen social protection for vulnerable workers. And four, leadership, innovation, management, research, and statistics. The following are the program activities and projects on outcome one, which is enhance employability of workers and competitiveness of enterprises. Just to give you an idea, what are the programs under outcome one? One is a special program for the employment of students, the government internship program, the labor market information, public employment services, productivity toolbox, the two-tier wage system, the mutual recognition agreements, and continuing professional development. On outcome two, which is sustained cooperation between labor and employers, we have the implementation of the new labor law compliance system, reconciliation assistance to the single entry approach of all cases at all DOLE offices, case management of compulsory arbitration cases, and industry self-regulation through voluntary codes of good practices. On outcome 3, strengthen social protection for vulnerable workers, we have the DOLE Integrated Livelihood and Emergency Dependent Program. We have the documentation of overseas Filipino workers. We have assistance to illegal recruitment and trafficking victims. We have welfare and repatriation services for our OFWs and reintegration services through livelihood and enterprise development also for our OFWs. On outcome 4, we have leadership, we have management, innovation, research, and statistics, where we have compliance and transparency seal, capacity building for critical functions, tripartite efficiency and integrity boards, administrative complaints committee, and quality management services, where ISO certification of all public transaction and support services are being pursued, results-based performance management system, bottom-up budgeting, gender and development responsive programs. We're setting up a labor governance e-learning center. We have online system for e-services. We have 24/7 call center. We have web posting of status of cases and text acquisition and application system, online application system for our labor law compliance and incentives. And of course, we are geared towards improving the quality of policies and decisions through research and statistics using regulatory impact assessment, program assessment, policy and statistical research, and advocacy. The attainment of these organizational outcomes will contribute to achieving our sector outcome of decent work and competitiveness. And overall, this will contribute to the national goal of poverty reduction in multiple dimension and massive quality employment creation under the Philippine Development Plan 2011-2012 on an inclusive growth. The DOLE serves 41.589 million workers comprising the Philippine labor force, both the employed and the unemployed, and also the 5.564 million overseas Filipino workers, 4.221 million of whom are temporary, while the rest are irregular. And then we engaged and partners with 16,959 labor and employers organization. The DOLE budget for 2015 is proposed at 11.596 billion. And this is 581 million pesos or 4.8% lower than the fiscal year 2014 budget of 12.177 billion.
Ma'am, what was your proposed budget to DBM?
19 billion.
Can you give us, sorry for interjecting a point, can you give us a copy of your budget as proposed to DBM, number one? And number two, can you help us facilitate things by giving us a matrix kung ano-ano yung mga programs and projects na nawala? O ano yung mga items na tiwasan just for our information?
So,
Please, ma'am.
Your Honor, we will
And
do
that
that.
goes for the other attached agencies of the DOLE as well.
Thank you, sir. We will do that. Cost structure, ang general administration and support services was higher by 1.86 billion or 13%. And the amount is 1.430 billion pesos. Support to operation is lower by 39.3 million or 38.24%, and the amount is 63.494 million. Operations at 9.208 billion also decreased by 591.6 million or 6.04%. Locally funded projects, which is budgeted at 894.64 million pesos, increased by 47.4 million or 5.6%. By agency, the DOLE proposed budget is allocated where 3 out of the 9 attached agencies got budget increases, and these are TESDA, the PUEA, and National Wages Productivity Commission. The rest registered decreases, and these are Office of the Secretary, the National Labor Relations Commission, the Professional Regulation Commission, the NCNB or the National Conciliation and Mediation Board, the National Maritime Polytechnic, and the Institute of Labor Study. By expense class, the proposed budget is distributed personal services 3.614 billion pesos or a share of 30% in the total budget, and it increased by 58 million or 1.62%. MOE is 7.886 billion pesos or 68% of the total budget, and it decreased by 57 million pesos. Capital outlay decreased by 58.2 million, and the budget is 96 million. By geographical distribution, regional operations account for 58.4%. Biggest share of the budget with 6.759 billion, and central office with a budget of 4.324 billion, and overseas operation with 512.49 million pesos. By regional distribution, 5 regions, namely NCR, Regions 6, 7, 8, and 10, have budget decreases, while the rest of the 12 regions have increased budget.
May I ask why, ma'am?
Basically po, sir, when you look at the itemized expenses, it will be reflected in decreases in livelihood.
Why? Katatama lang ho ng bagyo sa Yolanda, ng Yolanda sa Region 8. In particular, for example, why cut it?
So, I will have to get what the advice of the DBM on this cut since, as I have said earlier, we have proposed bigger budgets and these are based on the regional proposed budget which have been the subject of consultation with the Regional Development Council. But I will have
By
to
DBM.
coordinate with DBM po on this.
Kindly inform us, ma'am, because it doesn't stand to reason or logic kung ba't babawasan.
Apo.
Particularly in the Visayas, yun ang tinamaan ng Bagyo't Lindol.
Apo.
Tapos dun ho tayo magbabawas.
6, 7, 8 po.
Precisely my point, ma'am. Please continue, ma'am.
Okay. NCR, as I said, suffered a decrease, but it still registered the highest share in the budget. Region 4A is next, and 12, 3, and 6, they have increases in the budget. The 5 region which get a lower share of the budget is CAR, 4B, Caraga, Region 2, and Region 1. In terms of major final outputs, MFO1 on labor policy services has a budget of 294.2 million pesos, also a decrease of 10.7 million. MFO2, employment facilitation and capacity building services, with a budget of 6.554 billion pesos, also a decrease of 9.62%. And MFO3, Labor Force Welfare Services, has a budget of 729.8 million pesos, an increase of 4.77%. MFO4, Employment Regulation Services, has a budget of 1.630 billion, or an increase of 5.41%. Okay. In terms of our 2015 major deliverables per MFO, per MFO on 1, which is labor policy services, we have quite a number of tripartite bodies in charge of policy formulation. We have PUA Governing Board, we have NLRC, also a tripartite body at the commission level, we have TESDA also having a board, we have MNP, and they contribute to various policies that are being issued. So 817 of them. And then 271,500 productivity advisory assignments being undertaken or committed within the year. 3,379 advisory services, 17 research studies conducted and published, and 70% of policies issued and disseminated in the last 3 years updated. For MFO2, employment facilitation and capacity building, labor market information, we intend to reach 1.7 million individuals. TechBook education and training, we have 210,526 training for work scholarship enrollees subsidized, 191,508 workers trained, and 15,521 seafarers trained also. On employment facilitation, we have 1.7 million qualified person referred for placement and 250,000 a special program for the employment of student beneficiaries. On DOLE Integrated Livelihood Program, we have 120,000 livelihood beneficiaries intended to be reached. For MFO3, which is Labor Force Welfare Services, we have 4 million workers served, 2.024 million OFWs documented and monitored, 7,902 OFWs provided with assistance, and 100% of affected workers provided services within the process cycle time. For MFO4 on employment regulation services, on labor law compliance system, we have to reach 79,767 establishments, 4.58 million workers covered, 100% establishment with deficiencies given appropriate assistance and correction. OFW contract verification would be 2.5 million contracts reviewed in 2015. Speedy and effective disposition of labor cases. We have 100% of appealed labor cases disposed. Mandatory 30-day conciliation of all labor cases. 75% of complaints and requests for assistance settled within 30 days from filing. And then competency assessment and certification, 1.239.954 million skilled workers assessed for certification. And then 100% of application and permits, licenses, registration process within the process cycle time. For the first semester, our accomplishments would be also based on the MFO. On labor policy services, we have 70 policies already issued and disseminated. We have 163,391 productivity advisory assignments undertaken. We have 3,148 advisory services provided and 2 researches conducted, published, and disseminated. For MFO2, employment facilitation and capacity building services, labor market information, that will be 1.294 million individual reach. Tech book education and training. For the accomplishment for the first semester, we have 28,354 training for work scholarship enrolled and subsidized. 95,458 workers trained and 3,677 seafarers trained. Employment facilitation, we have 905,825 qualified job seekers already assisted, and 129,185 SPES beneficiaries already served. And DOLE Integrated Livelihood Program, we have 74,215 livelihood beneficiaries already served within the first semester. For MFO3, labor force welfare services, we have 1.811 million workers served, 848,000 OFWs documented and monitored, and 100% of affected workers provided services within the PCTs. That's for the first semester. On the last MFO, which is Employment Regulation Services, on labor law compliance, we have a rather low accomplishment, but we have a catch-up plan, Your Honor, to meet our targets by the end of the year. And then 1.195 million OFWs contract already reviewed and verified. And then we have reached 92% disposition of cases under our SPEED project, and 80% settlement rate for conciliation under the mandatory 30-day single entry approach. And for 195,351 skilled workers already assessed for certification under the competency assessment and certification by TESTA. That is all, Your Honors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Just a few questions. If I may, under your MFO2, conduct of training, livelihood, and enterprise development and other capacity building programs for students, youths, and disabled workers, and for rural workers, including programs for self-organization for plantation workers. 1.790876 billion. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mike, ma'am.
Yes, Your Honors.
May I know, ano ho ito? I'll give you an example. Let's not take my region. Let's take Region 1. 35,971,000. It's down to the last 1,000. May I know how you intend to, what are the programs and projects under this particular item? I know it's under MOE, but if it's a regular program, hindi ho ba?
Yes, yes
Diyan
po.
nakalagay yan. So,
Yes
may I
po.
know what the components are?
We have a regional breakdown po of the job seekers that we need to reach. Also, under MFO po ito.
MFO2?
Opo, MFO2. Labor market information po yan. Pasok din
Hindi
po.
po. training, I read it, livelihood, enterprise development, other capacity building programs for students, youth, and disabled workers, and for rural workers, including programs for self-organization for plantation workers.
Opo, ito po yung government internship program. Ito po yung tupad, livelihood, and special program for the employment of students. And
For example nga ma'am, for Region 1, may I know
Region
how
1.
you intend to spend this?
can you read niya?
Region 1, you allocated 35,971,000.
Hindi ko mabasa yung ano. May I ask po,
Please, ma'am.
Director Nene to
Ma'am,
solid.
ma'am, huwag ka nang
Hindi na kaya.
kumandong dyan, ma'am. Dito ka na umupo, ma'am.
Hindi na kaya.
Dito ka na umupo, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, Your
Good
Honor.
afternoon, ma'am.
Sa Region 1 po, meron po kami budget allocated na 35,971,000.
Yes.
Of the 35,971,000, Your Honors, specifies an allocation of 14,080,000.
80 meaning?
Yeah. Yes po.
Anong ibig sabihin po ng 80?
14,080,000.
80,000.
Opo.
For what?
For the special program for the employment of students. Yung pong aming DOLE Integrated Livelihood and
Sandali, ma'am.
Emergency.
Ano po particularly yung SPES? Saan po nyo gagastusin yung pera?
Pambayad po siya nung subsidy po ng student beneficiaries equivalent to the 40% po
40%.
of the minimum wage.
Paano po ina-identify yung students?
Based po yun sa mga allocation po namin, ina-identify po yung mga poor and deserving students. By criteria pong ginagamit.
Ano po yung criteria yung ginagamit, ma'am? I presume it's the same for all regions. That's why I'm pursuing this. Hindi ko isa-isa in bawat region. I just want to have an idea.
Ano ho, sir, out of school youth, and then ang income po ng family ay less than the poverty income threshold.
You have your own database, ma'am?
We normally are guided by the National Household Targeting System po.
So you're using NHTS
NHTS po.
to identify yung SPES. Next, ma'am, the remaining balance of approximately 21 million.
Kaka muna umalis na yan eh. Di ko
Ma'am, kung
mabasa
gusto niyo
sa
umupo
balik.
dito, maluwang po tayo dito.
Ang liliit eh.
Yung pong region
Region 1. Sam.
21,891,000 po para sa DOLE Integrated Livelihood Emergency and Employment Program.
What does that mean po?
Sir, this is an integration of livelihood beneficiaries consisting of displaced workers
Ito yung parang
arising
emergency
from
employment nyo.
emergency at saka po livelihood na rin po. And then disabled families of child laborers.
Is this a lump sum, ma'am?
There is a regional breakdown already which we can
Ito na
submit
po
to
yung
you.
regional.
Po.
No, is this a lump
Lump
sum
sum.
in the region?
No, hindi po, hindi po.
So do we have the list of beneficiaries already?
Yes po, yes.
Yes po.
Paano po yung emergency employment? Wala pa pong beneficiary yun. I mean, it's not wrong to have a lump sum. Don't get defensive on me. I'm just asking if it's a lump sum so that you can have more flexibility to move. I just want to find out. So for example, itong 35,971,000, pag humingi ho ako ng line item nito kung saan nyo gagastusin for Region 1, to a certain degree you can say what program, pero yung beneficiaries, wala pa po.
Yun
Yung
hong
munisipyo-
person, sir, yun hong actual beneficiary, wala pa. But we are guided ho in target setting for purposes of budgeting. Noon hong aming trend sa beneficiaries po.
But ma'am,
So, yung name
NHTS
po, wala pa po.
I'm sure kulang to sa pinangalanan o ninombrahan ng NHTS sa Region 1. Kulang to, clearly. It's not enough to provide students under... So, how do you choose kung sino? Bearing in mind po, bawal na makialam ang legislator at congressman dahil pork barrel daw yon according to the PDAF decision. How will you now go about identifying them? Because that's a basic concern for everyone.
Actually ho, ang pag-emergency employment, we really have to tie up with the local executives. Kung yun hong barangay, yung munisipyo, yung syudad po ang naapektuhan, sila po ang nagde-determine saan po yung emergency repairs of kung ano man pong nasira. We really have to tie up with them po in terms of
Agreement.
po.
So, 21 million yung para doon.
Opo.
And others. Ang tanong ko po, sa emergency employment lang for Region 1, magkano po?
Ang emergency employment po, yun po yung tupad namin na programa. It's 12,700,000.
For Region 1.
Opo.
For Region 1. So, yan po yung wala pang pangalan. Depende kung saan tatama yung bagyo, yung kalamidad, at depende sa certification ng barangay. Don't you think we should provide more? I'll give you an example, ma'am. We were hit by Glenda in Bicol. The regional ceiling you supposedly have for us is, for Sorsogon at least, was 500,000. Tinamaang munisipyo, 11 out of 15. Hindi po kakasya yun. In fact, yung pag-identify na lang, away-away na sila doon. And it's for how long? Pag tinamaan ho ang nyog at tumikwas yung dahon ng nyog, 3 taon na ho hindi magbubunga yung nyog. How long will 500,000 for one province last us in emergency employment? It clearly will not.
Yes, Your Honor. But we cater more dun ho sa aming target clients.
Which
Kasi
are?
sa entire budget po, may emergency employment din po ang DSWD, ang DA for the farmers. But kami ho, una, ang tinitingnan po namin yung mga displaced workers dahil hindi na po naka-operate yung company. O
Mas para dun sa employed.
Apo, sa employed po, tsaka sa informal sector.
Next item po, can you submit to us the regional, yung details na binigay niyo po sa akin for Region 1, can you submit that for all regions for this particular PAP?
Apo.
Thank you, ma'am. Still under MFO 2. Support services for employment generation for vulnerable sector to help them graduate into more productive, remunerative, secured, or more formal employment or livelihood. Region 2, 548,000. What is this, ma'am? Kayo na, ma'am. Okay lang, ma'am. Director.
548,000 po to be used for employment facilitation services ng Region 2 po.
Meaning, ano po exactly yung, what are we buying? What are we paying for? Who are we paying?
Employment facilitation po would be the conduct ko ng mga jobs fair, job referrals ng mga which we do through the Public Employment Service Offices. Sila ho ang ang operational arms ng DOLE under the PESO Act. And then lahat ho ng placement, available din po ang services sa kanila kasi ho yung aming electronic portals which is PhilJobNet ay naka-install ho in pesos that are already institutionalized.
But who are we paying, ma'am? Meaning, bayad ba to sa kuryente? Bayad ba to sa nag-maintain ng website? Renta po ba to ng Coliseum o gym para magka-job fair doon? Who are we paying, ma'am?
Ito po yung mga traveling expenses, communication,
Ng DOLE employees?
ng regional office po in charge sa labor employment facilitation services.
So, hindi kasama dito jobs fair?
Kasama
na
po
rin
lahat.
dyan. Lahat po.
Sa Region 2, ma'am, may job fair tayo? Kasama sa 548? I'm just citing an example, So, in Region 2, we have a job fair next year?
Lahat
Meron
po, sir.
lahat po ng regions.
Can you...
Actually, on a monthly basis po ang schedule ng jobs fair.
Can you break it
schedule.
up for us as well? For example, ma'am, either secretary or director, itong 548 po, parang ginawa natin kanina sa 35 million. Paano nyo po ito hahatiin sa traveling expenses, sa renta ng gym para sa job fair?
Pati ho sa SPES kasama po dito, sir, yung placement sa SPES.
How would you... Do you have an answer, ma'am? No.
We'll just provide for the breakdown, sir.
Please, ma'am. Next, workers' organization and tripartism and empowerment programs, 30 million. For Region 3, you had 896,000. Same question, ma'am. Sino pong babayaran natin dito? Saan po siya mapupunta? Anong covered nito?
Workers Organization Development Program po yan. It's a training or capacity building being availed of by the unions. And this would also include not only scholarship but even availment
So
of
we'll give the money
livelihoods.
to the unions or POs and NGOs who will train them?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Which
sir.
one, ma'am?
The
latter.
Yun yung iba, nag-i-enroll ho talaga sa courses. So, it
talaga?
goes to that school, opo.
And there is also a breakdown for this, I presume.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Kung bakit 395,000 lang sa CAR, kung bakit 568 sa Bicol, kung bakit mababa, 132,000 lang sa Region 1. I presume there's a...
Normally ho, ang criteria is kung maraming organized establishment po and unions operating there. Ganon po.
Kindly submit that to us, ma'am, too.
Apo.
Sorry ako, marami akong pinapasubmit kasi kami sinisingil eh.
Opo. Okay lang po.
Workers' Protection and Welfare Services, total of 555 million. Meron pong 244,000 na MOOE.
Region 2 pa rin po, sir. Region 2 pa rin
Hindi po, ma'am. Total na to. Another, still under MFO2, Workers' Protection and Welfare Services.
Worker protection.
Meron pong 305 million na PS. Huwag na ho natin pagdebatihan yon. Meron kayong MOOE na 244,593 million.
Yung pong breakdown ng 244,593,000, yung pong 187,754 will go to workers' protection and welfare services to OFWs.
Meaning, again, sino pong
Ito po yung
magbibigay ng resibo sa atin?
Ito po yung operating expenses ng ating 38 polos.
Okay.
FWRCs, yun
Okay.
po yun.
So, gastos ho sa opisina yan. Okay. Yung balanse po?
Yung pong 50,400,000 reintegration services to overseas Filipino workers.
Documented po yun. Galing po sa GAA yun because pag documented po, basically OWA would have the funds to finance po yung kanilang reintegration services.
Yun po yung balanse, na more or
Apo.
less 50 million.
50 million.
Workers' Protection and Welfare, hindi po eh. Yung unang item is 244 million, Workers' Protection and Welfare Services, presumably dito yan. Yung pangalawang item is Workers' Protection and Welfare Services to overseas Filipino workers, 187 million. This is 187 out of the 244. At yung 50, kasama din dun sa 187 for a total of 244. Ano po yung breakdown ng 50, ma'am? Or lump sum po yan, depende kung sino mga ilangan.
Ito po yung mga binibigay nating training at saka po yung mga livelihoods po sa returning OFWs.
So as soon as they come, we'll provide them training.
Kasama po doon sa reintegration package po yung lalo na kung mag-a-avail po sila ng livelihood assistance, may naka-built-in po na training component which is being done by
Binibigay
TESDA.
po ba sa kanila yung pera?
Wala pong binibigay na pera.
Tayo po ang magte-train sa kanila.
Opo, through TESDA. And then, after training, yung tools or mga jigs na kailangan po nila, binibili po ng DOLE. And then, yung initial cost of materials para mai-apply na po yung training na natutuhan at magamit na po yung mga equipment. Lahat po binibili ng DOLE. Wala
Galing
pong
po
pera.
sa inyo yan?
Opo,
Hindi po galing sa TESDA yan.
hindi po.
Yung ginagawa ng TESDA, iba pa po yun.
Iba pa po yun.
So,
But they do the training for them.
So kung may pinagawa po kayo sa TESDA, babayaran niyo yung TESDA school.
Sa training for work scholarship po ang package po.
Now, this is,
Undocumented workers po sila eh.
this is good for how many workers, ma'am? 50,400,000 is good for how many, and how much is the per unit cost of each worker that you will assist?
Ang 10,000 po eh. Ang starter kit po namin.
So if we compute at a maximum of 10,000, this is good for how many undocumented workers? Ma'am, baka mas magaling kayo sa math. Chair would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Binay.
Good afternoon po, Senator Binay.
50,000 minus 50
50
million
million po.
minus 3 zeros, de 50,000, tama po ba? Hindi. 5,400 ba o 50,400? Mike, ma'am.
5,400 po.
In 2013, how many came to DOLE's offices to ask for help so that they can avail of this particular, so that I will know the universe? So what you're telling me is this fund is good for 5,400 people. In previous years, gaano ka rami po ba ang dumudulog sa DOLE para humingi ng tulong kaugnay nito?
Hindi ho masyadong marami sa undocumented, but basically what we are servicing are the Syria repatriates who are domestic helper po. And under mandatory,
How many would that be, ma'am? In 2013, for example.
4,000 po for Syria, or less.
We have here a figure of 4,552 on reintegration.
Apo. Apo.
So you project the same, roughly the same number?
More or less ganun po. Kasi naka-fix ho yung 50 million, di ba, Nenet? All fix po yun eh.
When you say fixed
50
po,
million.
sino po nag-fix?
Nasa sa budget po yung every year, nakaalat na po yung 50 million. And then,
Na may butal na 400,000 po? But forgive me, ma'am, I'm just curious. Why 50 million, 400,000? Why not 50 million, 500,000? Why not 51 million? Or if you want to be exact about it, why not 45 million,
Na-confuse.
520,000? Para eksakto.
na-confuse po ako. Repatriation po pala yung fix na 50 million na kung kukulangin, nire-replenish po yon sa amin on a supplemental budget. Ito po ay repatriation basically and accessing livelihood no, to the maximum of 10,000 po.
Ilan nga po yung dumulog? So, kung reintegration tong 4,552, ilan yung repatriation?
3. As for 2014, as of June po is already 3,309.
3,309 ang nag-avail
beneficiaries, opo.
ng maximum of 10,000 but it can be less.
It can be less po. Depending po doon sa kanilang piniling start up na trabaho
Senator
o
Binay?
livelihood.
That is for undocumented, ho?
Opo,
So yung
undocumented.
documented talagang sa OWA lang
Oo,
sila?
opo.
Okay. So, kulang po ba yan o sobra yung pera niya? Nauubos po ba yan kada taon o sobra po yan kada taon?
Nauubos po halos namin po yun. Lalo na nga po at marami pong nire-repatriate po ngayon.
Kasi maraming gera.
Maraming gera. Lalo po sa Syria po, hindi po naman in-expect na may mga ganong crisis. So, kailangan po ng mas marami. Dahil saka lang po lumalabas yung undocumented OFWs pag po may mga gera.
Pag umuwi na.
Opo.
Now, social protection, 494,277,000. Still under MFO 2 po tayo. Ano po ito, ma'am? What's the 494 million for na ang title lang ay social protection? Kasama po doon yung binabanggit nyo na secretary na 50 million repatriation. Okay po yan. Yung balansi po, ma'am. Let's cite another region, parang kanina po. Region 4A, 28,280,000. Paano nyo po gagastusin yun? Yes, ma'am. Region 4A. 28,280,000. Saan niyo po gagastusin yun, ma'am? Under social protection. Bumababa lang po ako. That's the next one. After under programs and activities, skills registry program, yun na po yung pangalawa. Hindi na yata MFO to. Sorry, ang gulo kasi ng presentasyon ng DBM eh. So MFO 4 na po to. So 4. MFO 4. Sa totoo lang, ma'am, tingin ko sinadya ng DBM paguluhin to para hindi namin maintindihan eh. Yes, ma'am. Sample lang po. 4A, tama ba yung figure? 28,280,000. Ay, sorry ma'am. That's already GPB. Tama pati ako nalito. Sorry ma'am, that's already GPB. Yung social protection is just an amount. 494,277. Still under MFO 4. Social
Ang nasa
protection.
program po dyan and projects would be enforcement and compliance with labor standards po, sir. OFW contract verification.
Sige po.
And then competency assessment and certification po ng...
Sorry ma'am, nasa locally funded projects ako.
Locally funded. Okay.
Tama ma'am.
Okay.
Tingin ko sinadya talaga ni Butch to eh.
Pumapasok
Yes.
po sa locally
Yung pangalawa,
funded.
yun po yun.
And
Social
then,
protection.
Ah...
After skills.
Sandali. Accomplishment na pala ito.
Nasa budget. Binreakdown namin na by region. Di ba ma'am, skills registry program yung una? Di ba? 28,110,000. Yung sumunod po, computerization program, 13.3 million. Na may CO na 5.73 million, total of 18. Tapos, social protection. Ano po itong social protection, ma'am? The total is 494,277,000. What is that, ma'am?
Yung pong 494,277,000, ang composition po nun is 50 million for repatriation
Yes.
program, and the 444,277,000 is for the implementation of the various grassroots participatory budgeting po, yung BUB.
So yun na po yung GPB.
Opo.
Yun po yung naka-detail sa BESF sa dulo.
Opo.
Na mag-implement ay either LGU or NGOs in accordance with 9184.
Na-identified na po kasi, sir, yung ano dyan eh.
Yung recipient.
Opo.
Mr. Chair, can we get the list of
It's in the BSF.
yung previous last year ba were you part of BUB?
Meron na po kami ng BUB
Can we
last year.
get a listing
Yes
of
po,
yung mga
ma'am.
nag-participate po dun sa BUB?
Opo.
Ang liit naman nito.
Paki po. Thank you, ma'am. Kindly comply with the request of Senator Nancy.
Meron lang, like, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed,
can I-
ma'am.
For example, di ba yung GPB nyo is 444,277,000,000?
Yes.
Tama ho ba? Ano ho yun? How did you arrive dun sa amount na yun?
DBM allocated based on the identified na beneficiaries ho ng LGU.
Nababagsak sa competency ng DOLE.
Opo, nung sa amin pong program. Within the mandate of DOLE.
Anong menu, anong project ng LGU yung pasok dun sa DOLE?
Ang nakapasok po sa amin yung livelihood, emergency employment, and skills registry program.
Pero meron ho sa... I think nasa budget nyo, item number 75. Nasa na ba ito? Item number 75, PWD's assistance given to PWDs needing special assistive devices such as wheelchair, Parang kasama ho dun sa budget nyo. Hindi ho ba dapat DSW dito?
Pag workers na pumapasok po sa amin, pag nag-figure out po sila sa workplace accidents,
But hindi ho nakaspecify dito na related to work.
sa mandate po namin lagi ma'am naka-link ang amin po mga beneficiaries.
So, kasama ho dito, you can purchase wheelchairs, hearing, and special eyeglasses. Actually, ano ito Taguig City.
Sa ano po yan? Through the facilities po ng Employees Compensation Commission po.
So, sila ho bibili nung...
Apo, meron na silang program. Sa area, kasi
Pero
sa...
ano nakita nyo ito, hindi nyo sinabi na, I guess, mas maigi na sa DSWD na lang to. Kasi assistance to PWD.
Basta workers ho kasi mas ang laki-laki na
Pero
po
hindi ho
ng target.
nakasulat dito, PWD workers.
Aha.
Hindi ho, walang ganong kulatilya.
Kasi ang sineserve po naming clients, ma'am, talagang workers, both formal and informal
But you were
po.
able to get
Hindi na lang po
1
naka-specify,
million.
ma'am, dyan. Opo.
1
Dadaan
million.
po ba yan sa inyo o dediretso na sa LGU?
Diretso na po through facilities of the Employees Compensation.
So binanggit lang sa budget nyo pero hindi dadaan sa kamay ninyo? Ganun ba yan? It's part of your...
Sir, pag po yung provision of the rehabilitation,
No, GPB.
sa amin po talaga, sir, yon. Sa amin po.
Yung pondo nasa inyo.
Opo.
Kayo magbibigay sa kanila.
Opo.
Pagbigay nyo, doon ba nyo pwedeng limitahan o hindi pa rin nyo pwedeng limitahan doon sa binabanggit ni Senator Nancy? Workers lang ito, galing sa amin to.
Basically po, yun ang priority po talaga namin. And since hindi naman po malaki yung budget, talagang nasa-serve po namin, yung talagang kliyente namin. Workers na displaced po, o kaya na injured, ganun po.
Hindi, para sa inyo, hindi masyado importante ho yung grassroots kasi maliit lang yung budget? Tama ho ba? Kasi...
Ay, hindi po ma'am, kasi marami din po namang mga workers, lalo na po ang company, pag naapektuhan din po ng mga krisis.
So paano ho to? Yung LGU magsasubmit ho sa inyo na ito yung mga trabahador na tinulungan nila?
Opo, pag ho emergency employment, we really link up with the local
GPB.
LGUs.
Kasi di ba sa GPB parang naka-itemize ho kung ano yung mga projects na pwedeng napapasukan nila.
Opo,
na related
sinasubmit
to
po
DOLE.
sa amin ang kanilang proposed budget and then kung ano po yung kanilang kailangan at ano po yung na-identify nila based po sa budget na available sa amin, nire-review po yung project proposal po nila.
Can you submit to us the GPB component of DOLE? Ang problema po kasi namin, ma'am, siguro ni Senator Nancy din, yung binigay po sa aming listahan is by municipality, by region, by province.
Walang
Hindi po by
department.
agency.
Okay.
I presume you have the list under DOLE kung ano-anong munisipyo at anong proyekto. Meron ba?
Po, meron po.
Can you submit that to us? I think that'll be a clearer presentation so that Senator Nancy can see the different components and projects that DOLE will be implementing under GPB.
Opo, kompleto po yung breakdown po up to...
Nang DOLE lang, mama?
Opo, ito po sa amin lang po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. A few more questions. Tatalon-talon po ako. Sa National Maritime, sino pong representative natin? Sir,
Director Porter Pugoan. Porter.
are we set to be compliant? I think the deadline is December 31, 2016. Dun sa MLC 2006 at saka 2010 STCW Manila Amendments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable Senator. Insofar as the National Maritime Polytechnic is concerned, which is training as a training center, we have been working on the compliance with the 2010 Manila Amendments of the STCW. And the latest of which was the management level courses.
This is for officers, right?
For officers. When we were struck by the typhoon, so the physical facilities of NMP had been vastly devastated. And in 2012, the physical facilities were more or less installed. But with this,
Dissolved?
we have to start working on the physical facilities as well as the human resource component.
Sir, just a question. Can we be compliant by that time? You're telling me your limitations, eh?
Yes. But we are doing our best.
No,
to-
sir. Will we be compliant or not?
Sir,
Doon muna
may-
tayo magsimula because if not, then tell me what you need, if any, that we can help you with so that we can be compliant.
Sir,
Yes,
yun
ma'am.
yung
Yes.
management level course, na-develop na po yan and it is already compliant with the prescribed STCW convention po. Ang sinasabi po niya, dahil accredited training center sila, naapektuhan
Sila
po.
mismo.
Opo, yung delivery system. Pero MLC itself po, compliant
What
na po
about
in
the
terms of-
accreditation of the other schools? Maliwanag na rin po ba yun? Because there seems to be some conflict, there seems to be some problems. In fact, I just received an open letter from the sector today.
Kasi po, when Marina took over from DOLE, we used to handle po ang STCW implementation under the Maritime Training Center.
Ngayon,
Then, under one agency, which is Marina, yun hong portion ng TESDA, component ng STCW for the ratings, and then the PRC for the officers in terms of the engineers. Marina na po ang nag-manage noon. But NMP is an accredited training center.
so
one
wala
of
ng
the many.
participation po ang TESDA at PRC? What about the COCs, the certificates of competency, the certificate of endorsement, and the certificates of proficiency?
Chairman Mansala will answer po,
Ma'am, may
Your
papel
Honor.
pa ba PRC doon o pinagulo lang ng Kongreso yung proseso? Sila ho yun, hindi kami kasama doon. Sila yun.
Sir, the implementing rules and regulations was already took effect last August 10, wherein which the mandate of PRC under RA 8544 will already be assumed by Marina, and wala na ho kaming pakialam.
So, wala na?
sir. But we are just we will have a transition phase, and according to Marina, based on that implementing rules and regulation, they will assume the issuance of COC and COE by November 2014, and PRC will turn over all the functions to Marina.
COC, COE, what about COP?
COP ho, binigay na ho ng TESDA noon pa.
Nasa
for
Marina na rin?
Nasa Marina na ho, sir.
So wala na ho kayo lahat?
Basta sa ST.
Papel at pakialam?
Opo, sa STCW, ang nasa amin po is the Maritime Labor Convention, which basically protection of the rights of seafarers po.
Thank you, ma'am. Sa NWPC, ma'am, the wage boards are under your office, right, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
May I ask, I know you're setting the minimum wage rates, but do you have an idea what the living wage is?
Sir, the living wage is, we estimate it to be much higher than the current minimum wage. Because in the past, sir, the NWPC did a study trying to estimate the living wage, and it was supposed to have been updated annually and by region. And as far as 2008 is concerned, which was the last time that it was updated, we noticed already that it is...
Who updates it, ma'am?
It's supposed to be, sir, the National Wages and Productivity Commission. We're supposed to
Yearly.
annually, yes.
The
sir.
last one was in 2008,
Yes, sir.
or 6 years ago.
Yes, sir.
So, in 2008, out of curiosity, ma'am, what's the living wage for Metro Manila?
Sir, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 800.
Which is roughly double the minimum wage rate that you approved for Metro Manila around that time.
Yes, sir.
So, is it safe to assume that whatever minimum wage rate is prevailing in any region, multiply that by 2, and that's the living wage because you assume under the NWPC that at least 2 family members are working per family.
Sir, that's about it, sir. Roughly twice the minimum wage should be the living wage. Roughly, sir.
And because your assumption nga, kaya gina-justify niyo na yun lang yung minimum wage is because, correct me if I'm wrong again, ma'am, you assume that at least 2 persons in one family, either tatay o anak o mag-asawa, work.
Yeah, basically, sir, but really the basis for setting the minimum wage as such is because we balance it between the needs of workers and the employer's capacity to pay. So even as we adjust the minimum wage, we're doing so in order to restore the erosion without impairing business viability.
Agree, ma'am. So coincidence lang yun na roughly double ng minimum wage rate ang living wage?
Yes, sir.
For the past 10 years?
Sir, that's roughly lang, sir, because it's not always the case. Sometimes the difference is less than twice the minimum wage. We're just speaking for NCR, which we've been monitoring, so it's almost twice.
Now, in computing minimum wage rates, I agree that you take into account the capacity of business to pay. Pisong angat lang, nagrereklamo na mga negosyante. Hindi ko naman alam, kada taon nagdedeklara naman sila ng napakalaking mga kita sa stockholders nila pag nagre-report sila. Give me an idea, ma'am. Give the committee an idea. How do you arrive at the figure? I'll give you an example. Tumaas yung gasolina ng 3 piso. Tumaas yung pamasahe ng 50 pesos. Tumaas yung bigas sa ngayon ng 4 na piso. How do you compute the minimum wage rate based on the need of the individual? And how do you factor in the demands of the employers not to increase? And how do you arrive at a figure? Is there a formula?
Sir, there's an empirical formula that guides the boards. Sir, when we implemented the 2-tiered wage system, we advised the boards to make reference to the regional poverty threshold such that the minimum wage should not be lower than the poverty threshold in the region. However, we said that...
In the region?
Yes, sir.
Meaning region 1, region 2, not
Yes, sir.
Southeast Asian region?
No, sir. In the region. And that because the reason is because we want it to contribute to reducing poverty. So we're saying that minimum wages, it should not be a poverty wage, and so it should be above the poverty threshold, because the poverty threshold is the official estimate of the minimum income and expenditure required for a family to meet basic needs.
Which is how much, ma'am?
For NCR, sir, right
For
now...
a family of 5, I presume.
Yes, sir. It's 18,000 in NCR. Let me just check my data. But for
Okay.
NCR, annual per capita poverty threshold is 18,000 some plus.
Annually, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Sir, let me just check. And then we look at we also say the
Again, ma'am, sorry, 18,000?
plus, sir. I forgot the...
Gawin at 5? 18,2?
18,200 yata, sir. Sir, let me check.
18,200 divided by 12?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am,
That's annual, sir. Yes, sir.
1,516 pesos per month
Yes, sir.
is the poverty threshold?
Yes, sir. That's about it. Sir, per day, that's
Aman.
that's the poverty threshold generated by the NSCB, sir. That's the official poverty statistic.
Ma'am, that's 50 pesos per day?
Per person, sir.
No, ma'am.
Per capita, sir. That is per capita, sir. Annual per capita poverty threshold.
Ma'am, 18,200 is per person.
Yes, sir. Per person, sir.
So times 5 divided by 12.
Yes, sir.
Tama?
Apo. If it's for a family of 5.
That's 18,200 a month. Huh?
Yes, sir. Sir, the poverty threshold for NCR is, sorry, sir, it's 20,344 annual per capita poverty threshold.
What does that mean, ma'am?
Sir, per person, that's the poverty that's the
20,000, magkano, ma'am?
20,344. Sir, that's the minimum
Per person.
per person, sir.
Divided by 12. So per person, 1,695.
Yes, sir. That's
Per person, that's 56 pesos and 51 centavos per
day.
person.
Per day.
Per
Yes,
day.
sir. Yes, sir. That's it.
56, 51 per day. So divided by 3, that's 18 pesos per meal.
Yes, sir.
Basta maglalakad siya.
Sir, pagkain pa lang po.
Kaya maglalakad siya.
Yes, sir.
Hindi siya pwede mag-electric fan.
Yes, sir.
Kaya, so that's the assumption. Your minimum wage is, Chair would like to acknowledge the presence of our distinguished Senate President Drilon. The minimum wage rate, on the other hand, is higher.
Yes,
So
sir.
how much is it, ma'am, in Metro Manila?
466, sir, per day.
It's times 22,
Times 22 if there are just 5 working days in a month.
roughly, times 12. So that's 123,000 per year.
Yes, sir, annual. Yes, sir. 12,000, sir? I'm sorry,
123,000.
Yes, sir.
Divided by 12, divided by 5. Di ba? That's 2,000 per month. Divided by 30. That's roughly 68 pesos. No, per. So, kung ang threshold level mo is 56 pesos a day, ang minimum wage rate natin is at 68 pesos a day.
Sir,
It's higher.
Sir, the 68 is, you divided it, sir, by 5?
Yeah.
For the 5
Per day.
per day, yes.
I-divide ko by 3. The 22 per million, wala pa ring tricycle o pedicab, wala pa ring electric pan po yun na. So it's 12 pesos higher than the poverty threshold.
If computed, sir, per capita, yes, sir.
Yes.
For the family of 5.
Now, it just so happens that it came about that way. There's no formula that it should be X percentage higher than... Walang ganun?
Sir, sir, yung formula po is a certain weight given to poverty plus another certain weight given to the average wage plus a variable for the socio-economic indicator. So that would take care, sir, of the, among others, erosion in the minimum wage, so that all these things come into the formula. But the final amount, sir, is just a baseline figure for the tripartite partners to discuss. So it's not purely technical, sir. There would be some political exercise when the tripartite partners sit in the board to decide on the wage increase.
So it's a product of compromise. The formula is merely a guide.
It's a guide, sir, but they have to ensure whatever the amount will be has to be over the poverty threshold. But it must not exceed the market wage or the average wage so as not to encroach on the bipartite approaches being done by enterprises.
What do you mean by that, ma'am? It cannot exceed what amount?
The average wage, sir, because the market wage, the prevailing wage in the market, it's supposed to be higher than, it is higher than the minimum wage.
Of course.
Yes, sir. So it should not approach the average wage because that's already the space for bipartite bargaining, sir, like unionism and collective bargaining. So we'd also like to encourage enterprises to go into bipartite approaches.
Submit to us the formula, ma'am. Even if I don't understand it, I look for someone who can explain it to me and
Yes,
make me
sir.
understand.
Yes, sir.
The formula, short of the compromise and the political entanglements that ensue once the tripartite body meets.
Yes.
Para lang, so that we could understand it.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, one more point for Secretary Baldos. How many OFWs do we have?
At any given time po, it's 4 million out of the 10 million overseas Filipinos residing and working abroad.
And based on your own targets, you serviced or documented over 2 million?
More or less, ganun ho yung vicinity po. Kasi
So, yung
5% projected increase ho annually.
Yung porsyentong hindi natin na-document would mean...
Yun yung unang sagot ko is the stock estimate. But if we want to go on an annual basis, the indicative figure would be provided by POA in terms of the documented rehires at saka new hires po. So around 1 million po.
So anong percentage lang talaga yung alam po natin kung nasan at sino? Dahil kung marami pong kaguluhang nangyayari sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo, the only recourse we have is to go to you to find out how many Filipinos are working there.
Opo.
But if we don't have a record of them,
Like for example, 2013 po, and this would include around 366,000 sea-based workers, 1.836,345 po ang pass through the legal documentation of POA.
1.8
Opo.
out of a projected...
Out of a projected po na... What is the projection natin?
Meaning yung balance po yan yung undocumented
Projection na lang ang tinatanong nila, hindi yung documented.
Okay, ito po
Yung projection niya.
mga 2 million.
2 million po ang projection. Ang per semester po, just to give you also an idea, nasa 856,737 na po ang documented.
Ilan po yung undocumented?
Ang documented po sa stock
hindi natin
estimate out of the 10 million would be 800,000, less than a million.
The documented part.
The undocumented po. So doon po sa 10 million na nasa labas ng bansa,
So about 8%.
mga 4 million ang sa amin, mga 800,000 po ang undocumented, and then permanent residents po yung balance.
Senator Dillon?
Just to clarify that, first, there are 10 million Filipinos outside of our borders at any given time. All right, can you use the microphone, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
There are 10 million of our
Stuck.
countrymen.
Apo.
I don't want to use the word stuck.
Stuck.
I don't want to use that.
Apo.
Okay. Because stuck parang merchandise. Okay, but there are 10 million of our countrymen
Apo.
outside of our shores at any given time.
Apo.
Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Out of the 10 million, how many are permanent residents? And this is principally in the United States.
4 million, mga...
No, 10 million. 10 million are total Filipinos abroad. Of the 10 million, how many are permanent residents?
25,797 po ang permanent
Out of 10
residents.
million,
4.925.
well, let's say 5 million.
Apo,
5
5
million are residents.
4
Okay?
million po yung sa
5
documented.
million
Four.
are residents.
Apo.
No? All right. Now, the other 5 million would be what we would call overseas Filipino workers.
Opo. Both
Huh?
the temporary and the irregular.
Okay, so overseas Filipino, both, okay. Of the 5 million, how many would have passed through the POEA with employment contracts?
In 2012 po, for example, it's 4,221,041 workers. The
4.2
temporary.
million would be documented.
Apo.
Okay, that means about 780 would be undocumented.
Opo.
Is that how it
More or less po. Ang range po ng 700 to 800,000 po
kaya
yan.
nga, just to clarify, because baka mamaya kung ano ang,
Secretary Baldos, paano nyo nalaman yung number ng permanent residents?
There is a committee that used to be interagency that used to be under the DFA and now transferred to OP that come out whether we like it or not. Stock estimate po ang ginagamit, but CFO po ang nagre-release officially po nito. They get figures from us undocumented. I really don't know po kung
You don't know
DFA must be the one providing them with
Ilan
the
na
data.
po doon ng citizens? Sila din po makakaalam?
DFA po
As of
siguro,
when
sir.
po itong record nyo na 4.925 permanent residents?
December 2012 po, as of December 2012.
But it's a stock estimate, as you said.
Apo, they use the word stock
There are
estimate.
no names to this 4.925 million supposedly Filipinos who are permanent residents of principally the United States.
I don't think so, Your Honor.
Wala po. Itong 4 million plus po ninyong documented, may pangalan po ito.
May pangalan po, may kontrata po yun, may database.
Yung roughly 7 to 800,000, may pangalan po ba ito o wala?
Wala din po, dahil estimate din po, but katulad po sa Syria, malis po sila, undocumented. When the war broke out, then saka lang po namin na-document.
Saan po galing yung estimate yung 7 to 800,000? Is it possible that it's more?
DFA pa rin po.
Eh, kung alam ho nila, ba't di nila sinumbong sa inyo para maging documented?
Kasi usually po sa post na rin po sila kaya DFA, I would like to think
So it's a
forward the
survey
source.
again, it's an
Opo.
estimate. It's not an actual
No.
census
No,
nung
sir.
undocumented in each postings of the DFA.
Opo, kaya
And
nga
they
po ang
just
tawag.
give you the data.
Opo, ang tawag po undocumented nga po
So they just give you the data.
Opo.
Chair. Pero di ba meron ho nga kayong programa for the undocumented? Tama
Yes,
ho ba?
yes, Your
So more or less, meron na rin kayong figure kung ilan na yung natutulungan niya na undocumented?
For those assisted po na victims na po ng mga illegal recruitment or trafficking, then we have po the names and we have the data.
Mga
And
ilan
we
ho
can
yun?
Data ng illegal, ano?
My problem really, ma'am, is as Senator Bina and Senator Ilan pointed out, undocumented nga siya, as you said eh. Hindi nga natin alam eh. Gusto ko lang malaman saan galing yung figure na yon. Alam ka namang hinugot lang yun sa kung saang hangin.
Sir, yun hong dumidirekta sa DOLE o through POEA na victim sila ng illegal recruitment. In 2011, we have 224. In 2012, 312. 2013, 349. And January to June 2014 would be 472.
It's going up?
The way the trend is going, it's going up.
Why is it going up, ma'am?
Because nga po, nagiging subject po ng mandatory repatriation sila at nado-document na po ang kanilang pag umuwi dito na wala po sa database ng PUA, wala sa database ng OWA, undocumented na po sila.
No, yung illegal recruitment, di ba yun yung complaints? Is that
True complaints po itong sinabi ko.
Ba't nga po tumataas yung nagre-reklamo on illegal recruitment?
Marami hong tayong enterprising na mga talagang naghahanap buhay ho for overseas. But I think the PUA now has gone through the LGUs in places na high po ang concentration or incidence ng illegal recruitment.
Maybe ask the POA, why is the figure going up? Huwag niyo hong bigay yung sagot ng pulis. Yung sagot kasi ng pulis kasi daw ngayon nagre-report na yung tao ng krimen kaya tumaas daw yung crime rate. It doesn't follow. Please, sir. Inunahan ko lang ho kayo.
Honorable Chair, with your permission. Your Honor, maybe because of the scheme for illegal recruitment is also developing. That's why there are a lot of victims at present. The same time, Your Honor, on the part of the POA, we're trying to capture those illegal recruitment by educating the people. We have the pre-employment orientation seminar. Together with the LGU, we're going around the county, Your Honor, in order to fight illegal recruitment. At the same time, we execute memorandum of understanding with the local government units, Your Honor, in order to assist us in fighting illegal recruitment.
May website po ba kayo na nakalista lahat na accredited recruitment agencies?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a website, a POA website. At the same time, Your Honor, we have a mobile application where you can access the names of the agencies through the use of smartphone, Your Honor.
To find out kung legit o hindi?
Yes, Your Honor, if they're good standing. And it is included also there, Your Honor, the available job orders per recruitment agencies, so that if ever they will be recruited, they can check if there are really existing job orders for the recruitment agency, Your Honor.
Tapos may illegal recruitment pa din? There are about 70 million Filipinos with a cell phone.
Your Honor, our problem is the willing victims, Your Honor, despite being aware of